What is the ultimate survival 22? Picture this. You stand in a smoldering doorway in the ruins of what was once a prominent government building in your area, looking out at a wasteland before you. Ash falls down from the sky in chaos. Chaos is how you would describe the situation around you, the noise, the destruction. You know you need to leave. You know you need to get to an area that will increase your survival. A more remote, wilder country. And you know that on foot is your only feasible option. A .22 rifle will be your companion for this. In this scenario, what .22 rifle is that for you? What is the ultimate .22 survival rifle? That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns and gunfighting, tactics, survival, ballistics, the right way, with Almighty God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am your host, Michael Melito. I'll put in a bio and then we'll get into the main topic. I'll roll into a quick abbreviated bio and then into the main topic. First and foremost, I am a Christian. I don't apologize for that. God is number one in my life. I grew up hunting and fishing in the backwoods of the southeastern United States at a very early age. Some of my earliest memories are with firearms. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. By God's grace, He got me through that safely. After that, I served as an instructor, an urban warfare instructor and a desert warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. I also served with the LAPD, both full-time as a sworn police officer and in some more specialized assignments, as well as serving in the U.S. Army, full-time and part-time National Guard. I've been a FBI firearms instructor, still am an FBI firearms instructor, have been for a lot of years, also NRA certified and some other three-letter government agency certified. I've been a private contractor for a three-letter government agency I won't specify. I've been the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. By God's grace, He got me through all that in one piece, not because I'm better, but because He chose to have grace and mercy on me. I've been a professional hunter and guide. Professionally hunted things like buffalo and elk. Not many people today can say they've done that, but I'm blessed to be able to say that I have. I've hunted everything from white-tailed deer on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast to gray squirrel on the East Coast to prairie dog on the West Coast and elk and bear and wolf and slain all manner of beast. A state rifle and pistol champion a few times over in a few different disciplines. Enough about me, guys. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and fingers for battle. Let's get into today's topic. So for those of you that listen regularly, you might know that recently our truck got broken into. We went to live in Alaska for a while. And we stored our truck in a gated, guarded facility. And even still, stuff was stolen. One of the things stolen, one of the several guns that were stolen, was a .22, my go-to survival .22. Now, if you've listened for any length of time, you'll know that my one go-to long gun for the apocalypse is not a .22. It's many people's choice, which is one of the reasons I want to do this episode. It is not mine. You probably know what mine is if you've listened. It's not my primary, it's not my secondary, it's not even my tertiary. But there are certain situations where I would pick a .22, like the one alluded to in the introduction. Like where you have to cover a lot of ground on foot. And maybe the ammo that you take with you is the only ammo you're likely to have. And it's got to last you who knows how long. Right? That's where the .22 shines. It has a lot of merit. And a lot of people would choose the 22 for their one long gun for the Apocalypse. Now, I had a 22 for such an occasion, kitted out and ready to go. Mine was a Ruger Takedown 1022. It was special to me for a lot of reasons, but it was also a special anniversary edition. I want to say 50th anniversary edition. It had some special features. It also had many things that I did to it, including giving it a much upgraded trigger, doing quite a bit of work on it, customizing the stock, hollowing it out, putting secret compartments for different survival supplies, making a sling. My wife and I doing a gun project on it to camo it, using stencils, using all manner of things. Had really good combat style tech sights on it. Had a custom muzzle attachment on it. Had it kitted out in the bag that it comes in. Also had a 22 handgun in that bag that was taken. That was dear to me for other reasons, mostly because one of my friends who has since passed on gave it to me. It was one of my go-to training 22 handguns. And that gun was not just for break glass in case of emergency. I trained with it, and I did like survival expeditions. I would go out into the wilderness with that gun. If your object is to survive in hard times, maybe go out and try and survive when times aren't that hard, when it hasn't been 3 days since your last meal and you're not wounded and lost everything that you own, right? Maybe go out and try and do those things now. Anyway, I had done several expeditions and things with this Takedown 22. I had that set up, and I thought, I also had a custom fiber optic front sight that added on to the tech sight, custom trigger. Anyway, that was my go-to Apocalypse 22, and it's still a very good choice. Now, granted, you might not be able to find the 50th anniversary edition. I really like that 22. I had that thing for years and years. Who knows how many rounds I put through it. Who knows how much training I've done with it. But it is gone. And maybe that will be a blessing for you guys. I don't do this podcast primarily for me. I do it for you. So I haven't replaced it yet. Been trying to replace things that were stolen and other things I replaced first. And I've been trying in an attempt to, although I'm not glad that it happened, to take and use a term from a totally different group, build back better, right? Build my arsenal back better. I'm not a gun collector. I like to have useful firearms as tools and survival implements and fighting implements. But I thought in this to go on this quest, if I can call it that, a quest for the ultimate survival 22. Maybe I will end up, by God's grace and God willing, because everything I have is by His grace. Maybe I will end up with another Takedown Ruger 1022. But maybe there is something better. Maybe better all around. Maybe better for me. Maybe better for you. And whatever I choose, I'm not so arrogant as to think that what I choose as the best survival 22 should be what you choose. You may have completely different environment than me. You may have completely different parameters than me. Right? So it's a lot of hubris to think that what I pick as the ultimate survival 22 should be everybody's ultimate survival 22. But I think in going through this thought experiment and this quest for the ultimate survival 22, I can perhaps maybe help you. Again, because I do this podcast to help you guys. Perhaps I can help you find your ultimate survival 22. Okay, with that, let's get into it. Since I've already had one and I'm starting with it as the baseline, let me talk about the merits of the Ruger 1022 Takedown as a survival gun. Okay, the Ruger 1022 is almost unarguably the best semi-automatic 22, period, end of sentence. With no other caveats, not like you're doing some kind of specific sport, or it's expressly for training on an M4 platform, because obviously there are better choices for that. But just for an all-around, general-purpose, semi-automatic .22 rifle, I think there's no argument for the vast majority of situations. The TED 22 is the standard. It is rugged. It has crazy amount of longevity. It is reliable. It is decently accurate. It is handy. It shoots well. It points well. Here is a big one. Because it is so popular and so almost ubiquitous, it has a huge degree of aftermarket support. It is like the Glock of the .22 rifle world, right? You could maybe make an entire 1022 with no actual Ruger 1022 factory parts, right? You want different sights. There's a menagerie. You want different stocks. There's a plethora. You want different barrels. There's a cornucopia. You want different triggers. There's a smorgasbord of different things that you can do. Unrivaled, I think, in the .22 world. So that aftermarket support, even if, out of the box, the 1022 leaves you a little lackluster with its sights or with its trigger or whatever, and there's some stuff to be desired there, you can go to the aftermarket arena and choose and customize that to make it best for you. The 1022 has that going for it. All those things. Also, the 1022 takedown. The 1022 takedown gives you the ability to store that 22 in an area where you normally couldn't store a long gun. For instance, mine was carried, there's like a little, I would say secret, but it's not that secret because somebody stole something out of there. Like a hidden compartment in many Ford F-150 rear seats. Could put a Ruger 1022 takedown back there where you couldn't fit like a full-size, non-collapsible long gun. You can put it in a pack, for instance. Mine would fit in the back of my go-to bug-out bag, or my inch bag, or my go-to hunting bag. I have one large go-to rucksack that I use for all those things that I also ruck with pretty regularly to stay in shape and to be ready. It's an Eberle Stock Gunrunner. The Eberle Stock Gunrunner, as the name might suggest, has a compartment in the back to put a long gun. You could put a regular size long gun back there and it sticks out, but you could put a broken down Ruger 1022 takedown or something like it either inside the bag or in the rifle compartment where it doesn't stick out when you'd have no idea there's a rifle in there. So it gives you the ability to store a rifle and or transport a rifle in an area where you normally couldn't do such with a long gun covertly. There's many applications, whether it's in normal times or semi-normal time, whatever normal is, but let's say pre-event, left of bang, or right of bang. Let's say the apocalypse is upon us. You have to travel through an area and people with guns are shot on sight. Well, maybe that's a good time to collapse that gun and put it in your bag. Maybe for whatever reason you don't want to be seen with a long gun. The ability to put it in a pack. Maybe that's not your go-to fighting weapon and you just want it stowed in a pack out of the way. And if the occasion arises where you might need the 1022 or a 22, you can deploy it. There's a lot of merit there. It's, again, rugged, reliable. It's got a reasonable rate of fire. And that's going to be for all the guns on this list. They have to have a repeatable amount of firepower, meaning there's not going to be any single shots on this list. If you choose a single shot for your one long gun for the apocalypse, okay, that's on you. But I'm not, for me, they're out of the running. I would not consider them. And I have a really cool 22 that I like to train with. That's a single shot, bolt action, iron sighted 22 that I really like and really have a lot of fun shooting and even taking hunting. But if that's my one long gun, I want more than a single shot. Again, I'm not saying that that's a horrible choice for you, but I'm saying for me, I take them out of the running. The 1022, as far as a 22 rifle can be, is pretty reliable, and it gives you a decent rate of fire. It's semi-automatic. Okay, those are the merits and there may be ones that I'm forgetting, but those are the merits of the 1022. Oh, and one that I almost forgot, postscript on that part. Many of the older style of 22 rifles, they'll have just a rail on the top. I think it's a 3/8 rail. Kind of predates a lot of the modern mounted optics that we have today. The Ruger 1022 is drilled and tapped and you can put really good modern bases and rings and optics on there. And it's not like some kind of weird workaround. Really good ability to attach modern optics on the 1022. So that is something also. Not that other guns don't have that, but it certainly does. Anyway, what are maybe some of the weak points of the Ruger 1022 takedown? If we're starting as our go-to, like one to beat, like can we do any better than this? Okay, a couple of things. If you're not one to modify a gun, the trigger on the Ruger 1022 is not stellar. The iron sights are, I would say, serviceable and usable. They're not great. It's a little heavy compared to some of the guns on the list. I'm looking at just their model number 11100. Stainless steel 1022 takedown, 4.6 pounds. That's not crazy heavy. That's pretty heavy for a 22. I mean, you can get legit full like fighting ARs that weigh less than that. Not commonly. A common M4 is going to weigh more than that, but you can get them that light or lighter. The OIP rifle, I believe, weighs like 3 point something pounds. So if you're talking about power to weight ratio and it's your one gun for the apocalypse, you can carry a lot of ammo for that 1 pound. And maybe that kind of makes up the difference. So it's heavy. That's the point of that. It's a little bit heavy for a dedicated 22. All right, so what else is there to consider? Well, some of you may have been screaming at your dashboard or your phone or whatever you're listening to this on and saying, the Henry AR7, man. Okay, I'm tracking. I actually looked at the AR7. I've looked at it several times. And it is intriguing. It is, let's say, seductive for a survival 22. I mean, it's got survival in the name. It was designed as an Air Force survival rifle. Come on, man. Okay. There's some really, really big pros and some really big, what I would call cons to the AR7. Okay, pro. Super cool, right? It's a cool gun. Cool factor ups your survivability in the apocalypse. Check that box. It's pretty cool. Okay. This is actually an actual big one. It is buoyant. It floats. Right? So if you are in a maritime environment or your bug out plan involves a vessel of any kind, a canoe, a john boat, a ferry, right? It floats. That is nothing to sneeze at. That could be like the deciding factor right there. It would be a good one. If a canoe is your bug out vehicle, then the AR7 might be your jam. Okay. It also fits in its own stock. So if you're not planning on this being deployed all the time, like carrying it all the time in your hands, the fact that I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's a pretty water-resistant, dirt-resistant container, and it stores itself in there. It stores itself in its own stock and seals up. That is potentially, again, that could potentially be a deciding factor. You don't need any external thing. I think it carries itself in there and extra ammo, extra magazine. That's a big deal. It's also a takedown, so that's pretty awesome. Although a quick aside, I think it takes longer to assemble that by quite a bit than the Ruger takedown. But it is a takedown. It is collapsible. It's lighter. It's a pound, more than a pound lighter than the model we just looked at. Right? It is 3.5 pounds. If you're talking about surviving the apocalypse on your Lamborghinis, on your Subarus, and getting out of Dodge, right? What's the saying? Ounces equal pounds and pounds equal pain. Right? That's a pound. Even if you're just looking at the weapon system itself, how much 22 ammo can you carry for 1 pound? So if you're looking at, let's say, after your food and your extra pair of boots and your water filtration system and all the things, you have 10 pounds allotted for your primary weapon system, right? How much more ammo can you carry, just apples to apples, comparing that to the 1022 takedown? More than a pound. And a pound is a lot of 22 ammo. Those are some big pros. All right, but there are some, again, what I consider big cons. I don't think it has a reputation for having nearly as longevity as a 1022 or as reliable as a 1022. Now, I don't know that firsthand. I've never actually owned an AR-7, but from the reputation of both, I think the AR-7 may be a bit more finicky. And that's an individual thing, right? With any rifle, they're kind of like women. Like, don't assume that just because they're the same model, one is like the other. Or because one blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl likes spicy food, that the next one is going to like spicy food. She may hate spicy food. Right? Just because they appear similar doesn't mean they like the same things, is the kind of the point of that. Just because one Ruger 1022 really likes CCI mini mags doesn't mean that every Ruger 1022 likes and will eat CCI mini mags. 22 rifles in particular can be very individualistic, so don't just assume. You have to test your gear. The AR-7, I think, may be a bit more finicky. So if you're scavenging whatever ammo you can get, if you do end up doing any kind of pickup of 22 ammo along the way, it may be a bit more, let's say, vegan in its variety of diet as to what it will eat and what it will not. So that's a big con. Also, it doesn't have the aftermarket support, so you're probably not getting a bunch of different aftermarket sights on it. Although it does come with a peep sight, but there is that kind of con there. I don't know if anybody makes an aftermarket trigger for it, for example. You may decide, I don't want to do any mods to my gun, so that may be a moot point. But things like magazines are not going to be as common for a Henry AR-7 as they are for Ruger 1022. Ruger 1022 mags, I think, are one of the strong point of that mags. In fact, other models have adopted that magazine because it's so good. Also, the ergonomics are not there. The Ruger 1022 will shoot and handle. You can drive it pretty much like you would drive a full-size rifle. It's very similar in ergonomics to like a M1 carbine. In fact, it looks very similar to an M1 carbine as far as practicality goes, which is a very proven battlefield weapon. Not the same caliber and everything, but you get the idea. It handles like an actual rifle. The AR-7, not so much. The AR-7 has some kind of, let's just be polite and say, goofy ergonomics. You have to grab it on the barrel. There's no forearm to speak of. The pistol grip, because the rifle fits into it, a semi-pistol grip, the place on the stock where you place your hand, the palm swell is rather obese. So it doesn't have the ergonomics of a gun. So if you this is your one long gun, do you want it to have pretty goofy ergonomics? Okay, so there's that. Also, you would think it being like a survival gun that's meant to float, that they would have a stainless steel option. But as far as I'm aware, there is no stainless steel option in it. So that is also a big detriment. So some pretty big pros and some pretty big cons. Also, if you care about high capacity, obviously you can get high capacity mags for the Ruger 1022. I don't know that you can get a high capacity mag for the Henry AR-7. I don't know that that's a big deal for this, but it may be for you. Let's move on. There's one other big one in the common semi-automatic 22 takedowns, and it's not being made anymore, but perhaps it'll be made in the future, and were made for quite a while, so there are quite a few knocking around. I won't spend as much time on them, but they're the Marlin Papoose. I think the Marlin Papoose, if you're just comparing rifle to rifle, it's a little bit better in the ergonomics department than the Henry, but not as good as the Ruger. It may be the most accurate of the three, that Marlin Microgroove Rifling. That was kind of known for its accuracy in the 22 caliber and in other calibers as well. I think that the Marlin Papoose is similar to their other models that don't take down, in which case they were made for so long and in such great numbers. Parts and aftermarket stuff is available for some stuff, so I would say better than the AR-7, but not as good as the 1022. Although the gun itself doesn't float, I believe it came with a floating case. So if you get it with the case, okay, you check that floating box there if that's a thing for you. You can mount optics, but I don't think the system is as good as the Ruger 1022. And it weighs 3.25 pounds. So it's way lighter than the Ruger 1022. In fact, it's an intriguing option, and I'm really intrigued by the Marlin Papoose. Maybe they'll bring that back now that Ruger has bought Marlin. I would love to see, and it's available in stainless, which, come on, stainless. If you can go stainless, almost, in my opinion, almost always go stainless. If you're choosing between like blued and stainless. If you're talking about nitride or something, or chrome lined, then you have an argument. But if you're talking about straight blued and stainless, just go stainless. Especially for like a hard times use survival application, in my opinion. It's no fun scraping rust off a 22 barrel with a razor blade, because it's so caked on there. Ask me how I know. 3.25 pounds. By all accounts, I think a very accurate takedown, lightweight 22. So that Marlin Papoose, right? That's pretty cool. The big con is it's not being made. So it's not like you can just go, I mean, you probably find one on Gunbroker, but you're probably not just walking down to Walmart and getting one, where you can go walk down to Walmart and probably get if Walmart sells guns where you are. If not, that's probably a pre-bug out indicator if your Walmart doesn't sell guns. But you could probably go down to Walmart and get a 1022, or that's where I saw my last Henry Model 7 AR survival rifle was at Walmart, right? So, granted, I'm in Idaho, and that's kind of a thing here. Survival and hunting and things like that. But you get the idea. It's not going to be as easy to obtain. If you already have one or you have a good line on one, it's a cool, intriguing option. Now, if you're just going to make it rain with the cheddar, and money is no object, and I would submit and this is not my first choice for a long gun for the apocalypse, if it was, I would say sell the other guns you're not planning on taking and having your one go-to long gun for really bad times be a good one. There's an argument for that, right? If you can afford it. Don't take food out of your kid's mouth. But if you're asking me like the creme de la creme, Tactical Solutions makes, let's just call it a Gucci, the Cadillac version of the Ruger 1022 takedown. They make one that's awesome. Tactical Solutions, I've used those for a lot of years for a lot of things. Not their complete rifles, but their components, and they are top notch. So if this was going to be your one long gun, and you wanted the best, all the things I said about the Ruger 1022 and probably more accurate, probably more reliable. Everything on that thing is just really good components, really good quality. It's way, way lighter. So, I mean, what's money going to be worth in the apocalypse? You might be wiping your butt with it, right? So, but it weighs 3.7 pounds. It's way lighter than the factory 1022 takedown. And it's, again, probably, rifles are exceptions. You could get in just off the assembly line Ruger 1022 that's crazy accurate. And you could get one of these that's a lemon. But I think in general they're going to be far more accurate. The triggers, I'm sure, are fantastic if they're like any other Tactical Solutions things. Tactical Solutions are big in like the rimfire competition, like Steel Challenge world. So I imagine it's got a pretty good trigger. It looks like it has a better, faster magazine release. 3.7 pounds again. Did I mention that? They make a stainless version. I think better ergonomics. Here's take a deep breath, sit down maybe. The MSRP, $1,340. So that puts it out of the running right there. But if it was your one choice for the semi-automatic Takedown 22, you talk about the cream of the crop. It's creamy. Okay, now let's move on from the semi-automatic takedowns. Why would you choose anything other than a semi-auto? Why would you choose a manually operated 22 long rifle? Why would you choose a manual transmission for your apocalypse gun? Well, there are a couple of intriguing factors here for choosing this. I did a whole episode on shooting quiet without a suppressor. Totally legally, totally not mooning the ATF, not running afoul of the federal government, not trying to skirt around your $200 buy your leave tax stamp. But you can shoot quietly without a suppressor in many ways. One of the ways you can do that, quieter than most guns that actually have suppressors, is by shooting a rifle-length barrel 22 with either 22 shorts, 22 CB caps, or 22 Calibris. Either one of those options, especially the CB caps and the Calibris. They are crazy quiet, and they need no suppressor. So you're not getting that extra length, that extra weight, that extra by your leave tack stamp, none of that. And it's quiet. The issue is that they generally don't cycle in a semi-automatic. So not only is it not going to cycle, you're probably likely to induce a malfunction, which is even worse. You're going from a semi-auto to worse than a single shot probably, because it's not going to work at all. Or it's likely to not work or cycle at all and cause a malfunction. But many manually operated, not all, but many manually operated firearms will shoot and are even stamped for different types of this ammo. Like a lever action. A lever action has a pretty good rate of fire. Not as good as a semi-auto, but pretty fast, especially with that short throw on a 22. Now, I often don't recommend Henry, but here's one place where I would look at Henry. Henry makes one that's rated for shorts, longs, and long rifles. I don't really care so much about the longs, but if it's like a halfway apocalypse, a halfway collapse, and there's some ammo available, 22 long rifle may be hen's teeth, but 22 long, since many guns are semi-auto and won't feed it, you might be able to get 22 long, either period, whatever it costs, or for a much more affordable cost. So it being more of an omnivore instead of a vegan, right? That's a big advantage. The ability to shoot quiet repeatably without a suppressor. Because I can take a Ruger 1022, load a single round with no magazine in it, and fire it and just work that charging handle, and I get one quiet shot. Okay, but I can get repeatable, quiet firepower with a manually operated gun. Meaning, like, if I'm not doing anything illegal, or even maybe laws don't apply, so it's not even a thing anymore, but I want to hunt in an area, and I don't want people to know that I'm hunting in an area, right? You could see real world survival application for that. But it lets me shoot quietly without a suppressor. Even if you suppress both, it'll still be quieter because you don't have that slamming of the action. And if you've ever been around that, you'll know that the slamming of an action of a semi-auto, even suppressed, can be quite loud. It's not like the movies, right? It's not pew-pew. That's not how that works. Go stand next to somebody shooting a suppressed AR-15 and tell me how quiet it is. You're still supposed to wear hearing protection. That's how loud it is. Right? So you get the ability to repeatably shoot quiet without a suppressor. You also get the ability of having that weapon be an omnivore, meaning it'll shoot, or many of them, I shouldn't say all, but many of them will shoot shorts, longs, and long rifles. Also, if you're talking about a long time post-collapse, you might get some pretty nasty ammo. What if the only thing that you can find is Remington Golden Bullets? I have yet to find a semi-auto that will reliably shoot Remington Golden Bullets, not because the guns weren't there anything wrong with the guns, but because the quality control. I meant the Remington Golden Bullet is kind of like the dirt cheap bargain basement bottom of the barrel 22 ammo, like the cheapest you can make it. Obviously you're going to have more issues with that, but you're going to have less issues with a manually operated gun. So if all you can get is Remington Golden Bullets, if it won't cycle a semi-automatic action, but you're actually cycling it yourself, you get rid of a lot of those, not all, but you get rid of a lot of those malfunctions. So if you extrapolate that onto the apocalypse and things get bad and ammo is old, corroded, wet, hot, dry, sticky, bloody, you get the idea. You get some, although the rate of fire when all things are great is slower with a manually operated firearm, with really adverse conditions or bad ammo, it may actually be faster than having to fix malfunctions all the time, because you're trying to shoot Remington Golden Bullets out of your 1022 and they're 20 years old and they're corroded and they got blood on them. You get the idea. So there's some real merit for the manually operated. Of the manually operated actions, the two big and common ones, they're not the only ones, but the two big common ones that stand out are the lever action and the bolt action. Now let's go with the lever action. Probably, of these two, the fastest rate of fire. So you got that going for you. Also, Henry makes the lever, and they're not the only ones. I think Browning does too. They're a little bit more expensive, but Henry makes many lever action 22s. Schiappa, which may sound like a funny word, but if you don't know about Schiappa guns, they make some kind of budget guns. They also make some really, really nice guns. Their lever actions, I think, are known for being pretty nice guns. Schiappa makes a 22 long rifle takedown. So you can still get that takedown, where the Henry doesn't. The issue is neither one of these make them in stainless. So I'm not saying stainless is a go or no-go for me. It's not like a go-no-go gauge, but it's a big one. It's a big box that's left unchecked with both of those. And I don't know of anybody that makes a stainless lever action 22. I don't know of anybody that makes a stainless lever action takedown 22. That will be sweet. But I'm just discussing this because maybe you decide that's what you want. Maybe you live in an area where stainless doesn't matter to you. Right? If you're in southern Arizona, probably rust on a firearm is not as big a deal as if you live in the Georgia swamps. So that lever action, pretty good rate of fire. I'll briefly touch on pumps. There are quite a few past and present pump action rifles. Now, some pump action guns, ironically, are the most reliable manual operated guns, like a pump action shotguns. If it's a good one, not like some Chinese copy, but a good one, they can be some of the most reliable guns on the planet. Likewise, the Remington 760 full-powered rifle is known, I think, for being rugged and reliable. But ironically, many of the smaller calibers, like the 22s or even the pistol calibers, like a Colt Lightning or whatever the Taurus one was, and the 22s, in my experience, have never been as reliable. They're not super reliable. So unless you have one and you have a really good deal on one, I would lean more towards, for the 22 anyway, more towards the lever or the bolt. Now let's move on to the bolt. There are a lot of different options, past and present, for bolt action 22s. If you talk about that Gucci, or I guess Cadillac version of the 1022, they actually make kind of a 1022 based bolt action. And that is the Awahi, made by Tactical Solutions. They make the Awahi, which is everything I said about that other one, but it's bolt action. Right? It might weigh slightly different, but it's probably going to be about the same. But if you want a bunch of that, not everything, but a bunch of that aftermarket support, but on the bolt action and the ergonomics and the takedown ability and all that stuff we talked about, that Tactical Solutions Awahi. It's still well north of $1,000 MSRP. But you talk about a Cadillac option, turnkey, brand new Cadillac option, that's the one. Other bolt actions that are common. Savage. Savage makes some really good bolt actions. They make a few models that are stainless, although they're fairly heavy that I'm aware of, especially that they may make a lightweight option, but I'm not aware of them making any lightweight stainless option. But if it's like any of the Savages I've ever had the pleasure of shooting, very accurate. Box magazine fed, I do believe. So you got that going for you. Probably bolt action is inherently, and there are exceptions, right? You could get a lever action that shoots more accurately than a bolt action in a 22. Again, they're very individualistic. But I think in general, just like their centerfire counterparts, bolt actions are inherently accurate. Downside is most of them, except for like that Tactical Solutions and some of the single shot small ones, they're pretty heavy. And it's a bolt action, so it's got a slower rate of fire than obviously the semi-auto and probably the lever action. But very accurate, and I think probably very rugged too. Just like in a centerfire rifle, a bolt action is probably a pretty rugged and robust operating system. So you got that. I'm not saying that every 22 bolt action will feed the shorts and the CB caps, but it's probably more likely to work than a semi-auto. CZ, if you want like a really nice heirloom quality. And I think they're blued, but a lot of CZ guns are nitrided, and nitride is a whole different ball game. So if you may look into that, and I can't tell, I'm not really considering one for this. If you want like a nice small game or training rifle to hand down generation after generation, those CZs are just beautiful 22 rifles. I think the 457 kind of variant. But the 22 bolt action has some real merit here. If anybody's aware of any, and I was doing quite a bit of research for this, I'm not aware of any other besides the Tactical Solutions easily, take down, break down, or foldable 22 bolt actions. There may be some. There probably have been some made in days of yore. I'm talking about like current production. But there is some real merit for a manually operated 22 for a survival gun, for an ultimate survival rifle. Okay, some other things to consider here, and maybe cheating a little bit going on, but I think it's important to think outside the box. This gun is a gun I probably knew existed, but until I started doing this research, I didn't realize how much merit it had. Keltec. Some people like them, some people hate them. Keltec makes some really good guns, and they make some guns where you scratch your head. At least I scratch my head, and I'm like, what were you thinking? A bullpup 12 gauge? Why? But they make some really good guns, and this may be one of those good guns. And that's the Keltec SU-22. Now they make the Keltec SU-16, which is like a foldable, lightweight, I don't want to say AR-15 variant, but it shares a lot of similarity with an AR-15. STANAG magazine, so AR-15 magazines, semi-automatic, 16-inch barrel. So you get the idea. There are a lot of commonality, not exactly the same. Even it's a piston system, which if it's a good piston system, may be even better for a lot of things, especially survival applications, than a direct impingement system. That's the SU-16. They make one, the SU, and I should say that my experience with the SU-16 has been very good. I don't think it's as good a battlefield weapon as an M4, but for a survival weapon, it has a lot of merit. Anyway, moving off of that and going on to the SU-22. They make one, it's not a takedown, but it's a foldable. And some of the SU-16s will fire when folded. I think that if the SU-22, if it fires when folded, right, that could give you some real merit. Why? Let's say you have a dedicated space in your pack, like my Eberly Stock Gun Runner with an open top rifle storage thing. I could have a gun back there with like a single point sling or a double point sling attached to it. Nobody would know that I had a rifle in there, and I could quickly grab it and use it, even if it's still folded. If somebody attacks me, jumps out of the bushes, whatever. Now, I don't know why I wouldn't have a handgun, but let's say, I don't know, maybe I'm Canadian, right? There's a good example. Not allowed to have handguns, not allowed to buy handguns. So if you had to get it and use it, if it could be fired folded, right, you're probably not going to be like, hey, hold on, let me get my Ruger 1022 takedown out of my pack and assemble it and load it, and then I'm ready for a fight. But if you could grab something and use it even when it's folded, that's a horse of a different color there. So that Keltec SU-22, it's also light. It's like 4 pounds, which is not as light as some of the options, but quite a bit lighter than the Ruger Takedown. Also, it comes with what appear to be, and I haven't shouldered one, but they appear to be pretty good, usable, combat-style, robust iron sights. That's pretty cool. Also comes with a rail. We haven't really talked about yet, but just like on any other option, the ability to mount a white light. Now, you may argue the merits of battery-powered stuff in the apocalypse, but while you have it, you might as well use it. And then when the batteries are not, you throw it away or whatever. But for, let's say, again, a halfway collapse, positive identification of targets or the ability to identify something at night, like a raccoon or something that's come into camp, right? That's okay. There's really no downside to having the rail on there. It weighs 4 pounds. A lot of times rails are heavy, but this one, this gun is lighter than the 1022 Takedown, and it has a rail. And it doesn't come apart, it folds, which you might consider an advantage. Issue with this is, it says blued. Again, I don't know if it's nitrided versus blued, but if it's blued, I don't like that. I'm not crazy about blued guns. So that's a big demerit for me. Also, I don't know how reliable it is. Is it reliable? I don't know. Is it reliable as the 1022? Probably not. Is it as reliable as many other semi-auto 22s? Maybe. It's 4 pounds. It can fire when folded. Right? So you see where there's the appeal there. And I wasn't even really tracking this one, but it's probably in the running. Right? It appears on paper, and that can really get you in trouble sometimes. I don't know how the trigger pull is. It might be like trying to drag a piano down a dirt road, as far as gritty and noisy and unpredictable. But if it's a serviceable trigger, because I don't think it takes like an AR-15 trigger, I could be wrong, but I guess it's a pretty good wild card. Now let's talk about a little bit more of a cheating option. You may be aware that they make 22 conversion kits for AR-15s. So you can buy, and it's basically the footprint of the AR-15 bolt. And you get this conversion bolt, let's call it. It's probably not the proper nomenclature, but you probably can picture what I'm talking about. It's a bolt that slides into your AR, and different magazines, obviously, that feed .22 long rifle, but use the same kind of footprint and use the same magazine well and everything as your existing AR-15. So, let's say your go-to, and it's not mine, but for many people, their go-to peanut butter and chocolate is hit the fan gun is an AR-15. But you still want the merits of the .22. Right? Because I don't care how strong you are, you're probably not rucking long distances with 2,000 rounds of AR-15 ammo. You're just not. And magazines and whatever. But, I mean, 2,000 rounds, that's 4 bricks of .22. You could probably ruck that. So you could have your go-to combat loadout of 5.56 223, a proper M4 battlefield rifle, and then you could have this very lightweight, let's say, bolt and 2 magazines, because it's not your primary fighting option, and a bunch of .22 ammo that fits and works inside your AR-15. And again, it's kind of cheating, but what's the weight of that? It's going to be lighter than any of the options we talked about, because you're just talking about a conversion bolt and 2 magazines. So that's going to be far lighter still. Now, I wouldn't choose this if it was really, I was only going to use it in .22. I would get a dedicated .22. I don't see how it's probably not going to be as reliable as a purpose-built .22. It's probably not going to be as accurate as a purpose-built .22 because of different twist rates. A lot of your regular .22 long rifles have a 1 in 16 twist rate. A lot of your AR-15s are going to have a 1 in 9, 1 in 8, 1 in 7 twist rate. You're talking totally different. It'll still work, but I don't think it will work as well as a dedicated .22. But it's an intriguing option, especially, and this is especially for me, because, you know, left of bang, pre-event, if I am having a .22, a lot of times what I do with it is train, and I train with it as an affordable trainer to a go-to fighting rifle to keep my riflemanship skills sharp. So I could literally have the same trigger, same everything, same optic and everything as my go-to fighting AR-15 and train with it in .22 to save a bunch of money. And I still have the .22 option. So if I'm going to have that and I decide, and it's not, again, this is not my primary, but if it was, if I decided, time to bug out, I'm taking the AR, why not have the option to take this kit and let's say I just want to take 1,000 rounds, 2 bricks. Why not? Right? It doesn't weigh that much more. I could carry 1 more magazine of loaded AR-15, 5.56 223, or I could probably carry this whole kit plus the .22 ammo, right? So it's really, really intriguing. Is it cheating? I mean, you're trying to survive, so let's not be a stickler for thinking outside the box. I think thinking outside the box in a survival situation in many ways is a more important skill than what cool guns and gadgets you have. Thinking outside the box is a big thing. So I guess for me, the big ones that are in the running, and this might change in this research because I'm not going to be buying a gun in the next couple of days. Still the Ruger 10/22 takedown in stainless. Got a lot going for it still. Maybe next to that would be that Keltec 22 SU-16. I wish it was in stainless. And then after that, perhaps that .22 conversion. Because I like to shoot and train with an AR-15. It is one of the de facto fighting rifles of our time. So why not keep the skill sharp and train more affordably? And I could also train with either one of the other options too. But if you want the most analogous, why not use the exact rifle that you have with a different caliber conversion? It's just what I'm thinking. So for me, those would be the top 3. If I'm picking just no other caveats, like you're not me, you are not worried about the cross training. Again, if this is your one gun, you may really look at the Tactical Solutions. Those are like your Cadillac version. Your Ruger 10/22 takedown, the standard models, just go stainless. If you have an option to go stainless, that's my advice. You may decide you don't want stainless for whatever reason. But 10/22 takedown, and then the Henry AR-7. I said it had a lot of benefits and a lot of detriments, but if you think those benefits outweigh the detriments, that AR-7, those might be the top 3 if there were no other caveats. If my more specialized criteria did not apply to you. There's a top 3 for that and a top 3 for that. I would love to know what you think I missed, what I left out. Something like the Remington Speedmaster, great rifle, but they're kind of obscure. But what do you pick? I just put this out on Patreon, and most things on Patreon are for patrons only. I put this post out, so you may have to scroll back a bit, but I put this post out. Let me know, right? So you want to go to Patreon, there's a link in the show notes. You don't even have to sign up. You can just go and let the tribe, the community, myself included, voice your opinion. What do you think is the ultimate survival 22? Do you agree with some of my picks? Do you think I'm way off base here? Do you think picking a 22 for a go-to survival gun is just ridiculous on its face and it's just a glorified wrist rocket? Again, I didn't say that it was my pick. I didn't say a 22 was my go-to. I'm saying for certain criteria, it may be a good choice. But what would your ultimate survival 22 be? I would like to hear it. Again, go to Patreon. There's a link there. I'd love to have you on Patreon as a patron. But you can just go and give your opinion on there without signing up. So consider going to Patreon. If you consider becoming a patron, just go there and sniff around, right? Nobody's got a gun to your head. Just check it out. I think some of the posts you can like halfway see, so you can see the kind of stuff that I post on there, even if you can't fully read it. But anyway, there should be a link in the show notes for Patreon. With that, let's roll into the tactical tip of the day and then the tactical verse of the day. Tactical tip of the day. If you're serious about survival, it's not just about the guns and the cool stuff and the body armor and the war belt. You should know from my bio, I'm pretty into that stuff, but it's not all about that. I'd submit if you had gangrene or some kind of deadly infection, you would trade every gun and every amount of ammo that you have, if it were you, or hopefully you would do this for your daughter or your wife, if they had gangrene or a life-threatening infection. So instead of putting yourself in that situation, get some antibiotics. Now, many human antibiotics require prescription or require some kind of special piece of paper. But what are you going to do when your goldfish gets some kind of bacterial problem in the apocalypse, right? How are you going to take care of Goldie the goldfish? Fish also need help with bacteria, and fish can also get things like doxycycline, penicillin, amoxicillin. So I'm just saying, look into your fish and how to protect them from bacterial infection, and see if that antibiotics is not coincidentally exactly the same and exactly the same dose, exactly the same amounts as other types of antibiotics. That's all I'm going to say on that. Your tactical verse of the day. One of the great things about the 22 and why many people would pick it for a go-to survival gun is that it has the ability to put food on the table, put meat on the table. This is from Proverbs 12. The slothful man roasteth not that which he took in hunting, but the substance of a diligent man is precious. Whatever 22 you pick, or whatever other thing you pick, if you plan on being able to put food on the table, the time to hunt is not in the apocalypse, right? It's not the time to figure out how to hunt, or how to shoot, or how to do any kind of tactical maneuvering, right? You should go do it now, where if you fail, you're not going to die. Like where if you don't get anything, you can go back and go to Walmart and pick up a chicken. Hunting is absolutely a skill. The tool, the 22, or whatever other weapon, whatever other tool that is only a tool. You have to be able to apply the skill with the tool to procure the meat. A 22 is a great way to learn basic fieldcraft and hunting, walking quietly, using the wind to your advantage. Things like that. So if you have a 22 and you need to brush up on your fieldcraft, I'd encourage you to get out and do some hunting if it's legal and you can and where you are. And if you can't, maybe get out and try and hunt without a gun. which may sound ridiculous, but just try and go out and hunt with a camera, right? If you know your effective range with a said firearm that you plan on taking, try and stalk within that range and take a picture of said animal, right? It's not as good, but it's better than nothing if that's what legality will allow you. I'd submit it's still probably more beneficial than sitting down and watching Netflix and eating Doritos. So anyway, that's my encouragement to you. Get out there, be diligent. Get some hunting in if you think that that's beneficial to you. Anyway, with that, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.